lean, yes, is about people and problem solving, but people create chaos and noise. So AI really is just helping us to take the chaos and noise out of it, but retain the people part.
AI is not going to fix a broken process. So I think we need to start there. AI can make some suggestions and probably do so faster than a human being can do, but it all starts with having a process before we apply automation or before we try to systematize it.
One of the mindsets that I think is important is to see AI actually as a teammate. Like, we're working together. What does my teammate need to be able to do this?
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Lean Solutions podcast. My name is Catherine McDonald, and I'm joined by my co-host, Shane Daughenbaugh. Shane, how's it going today?
It's going well, Catherine. Thank you so much for asking. Thanks for having. I am excited about today. As always, I'm sure this is kind of a repeat every time we do this. I always say I'm excited because I am. I love having the guests. I love learning new things, and I love talking about the things that we're passionate about in life and how we can share that with other people. So it's a good day. It's a good day. I love that.
We just record that and just play that every time just to get us in the mood. That's brilliant, Shane. Same here. I absolutely am excited every single time. And today is no different. So Shane, we have a great topic, a topic that's just really hot right now. So just to let our listeners know, the topic is smarter, leaner AI meets lean thinking. Okay, I've been dying for an episode on lean and AI. Another one. I know we've touched on it, but I want more. So, Shane, are you, I suppose, familiar with AI? How familiar are you? And what are your experiences with lean and AI?
I am still learning. I am desperately trying to catch up with where AI is, because I think, as people say, and as our guest will probably mention as well, it's a huge disruptor in every industry across the way. Currently, I use it in probably a pretty minimal way. Like just recently, I used it to pull all of my sticky notes that I had this 2-day workshop, and I pulled the sticky notes, ran it through AI, had AI transcribe it from the sticky notes into a digital format, into a list, and actually put it in a spreadsheet. And then I asked it to summarize some of the themes that are found in those sticky notes. So that's what I was able to share with the sponsors after the workshop. But I know that that's just a small portion of what AI can do, especially for those of us that are used to whiteboards and stickies. We're hot on this. I love these.
I know. And I still wouldn't skip the stickies part.
Oh,
I mean, it's a people activity, and lean and AI isn't going to cut out that either. But the way that you use it then to do your follow up is brilliant, and we need obviously more of that. And our guest today will hopefully share his insights with us. Shane, would you like to introduce our guest?
I'd love to. All right. So today's guest, ladies and gentlemen, is Randy Kesterson. He is a seasoned operations executive, consultant, and thought leader with over 3 decades of experience in manufacturing, supply chain, lean transformation. Randy's career includes executive roles at companies like Eastman Chemical and J.M. Corporation, where he led significant enterprise-wide process improvement initiatives. As a certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt and skilled coach, Randy helps organizations achieve operational excellence through practical strategies grounded in real-world experience. He currently serves as a trusted advisor and consultant, guiding leaders across industries in in strategy deployment, leadership development, and continuous improvement. Randy is passionate about empowering teams to drive sustainable change and is a frequent speaker, trainer, and contributor in the lean and leadership communities. And we're excited to have him here to share his insights and experience on today's episode, which, as Catherine said, smarter and leaner. Hey, let's talk about where AI meets lean thinking. Welcome to the show, Randy.
Thank you, Shane. Thanks for that. It sounds like my mother wrote that introduction. So most of it is true, and I'll try to live up to it.
Oh no, it's
Excellent.
fantastic. It's fantastic. And one of the things that actually, Randy, we didn't mention there is that you're writing your third book. Isn't that
I am.
right?
I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
So you
as,
you have so you've two books already, and this third book, if I'm correct, is on AI, which is obviously, why you're here as well. So it's called Integrating AI into Lean, Driving Smarter Continuous Improvement. Is that right?
exactly. Yeah. Not too long ago, I couldn't spell AI, but I'm very intrigued by the subject. I see it as Shane mentioned, I see it as a tremendous disruptor. And I think we either incorporate it in our lives, much like the computer and the automobile and the email and all the other things that came before it, similar disruptors, or we risk being less competitive with our fellow companies in our niche. So I think we need to incorporate it. We just need to incorporate it carefully. And the book I'm writing, what I'm trying to do is gather a spectrum of thought from those who are opposed to the subject of AI incorporation and lean, and those who are the early adopters.
Yeah, great
Right.
stuff. And just before we get into any of the questions, you present just such a great simplified understanding of the definitions of AI and lean, and you shared them with us earlier. I just thought these are really good. Maybe can you just talk us through what your definitions are, just to set the scene for us, since we're going to be talking a lot about AI and lean.
Absolutely. So I see, and these are working definitions. I'm still testing them out with my audience and those experts that I'm interviewing. But I see AI as a set of tools that really that use data, increase the learning, and help us with decision making. But it's an enabler. It's not a tool that that we're going to be using exclusively to improve lean processes. With regard to lean, I kind of have a broader definition than some, where there's the narrow definition, but I think of it in terms of including tools and approaches like theory of constraints and agile and Six Sigma and other CI OpEx tools. I've spent a lot of time using organizational change management incorporated. So I'm looking at lean from a broad perspective, but AI fairly narrowly with regard to how it can help us as CI OpEx lean leaders.
So how do you see these actually complementing? Like, because we're talking about machine learning, and lean talks about people and focuses on that people. So where do you see these guys actually complementing things?
Yeah, I think your example you mentioned earlier is one, but what I found personally, and I'm gaining other examples from those that I interview, some of the laborious tasks within a lean problem solving episode. For example, have you ever used a tool called interrelationship digraph?
No.
So
it sounds way too complicated.
It sounds very complicated, and much like things like Hoshin Conry, it has an unfortunate name, but it really works. So with a client in the last few days, well, let me drop back a bit. So a few years ago, if I used this tool, I would enter an organization, and you might have a group of leaders who were disagreeing on the problem to be solved. And each one of the 10, let's say, leaders would come into the room, and they all had their own idea of what was wrong, what we needed to attack. So you start with chaos. We gathered data, tried to just put up on the wall all the problems that they were faced with. And then we'd use a tool you probably heard about it, the affinity diagram.
Right.
Just to group those sticky notes into groups, right? So just envision it as like the positions on an old analog clock from 1 to 12. And then we would draw arrows from those, from the cause to the effect. And by the end of that episode, it might take a few hours to complete that, depending on the complexity of the problem. We would have just a spider web of arrows, and then we would have to stop and try to count all the ins and outs. And after all of that, we would finally come up with a conclusion, which of those were drivers, potential root causes, and which of those were effects. But the whole team had to sit there the entire time. Wasn't much value gained in doing so, and we tended to lose the audience as a result. So recently, what I've been doing is you can incorporate AI either in helping to create that affinity diagram, or you can stay with the older method of just having people, group the post-it notes themselves. But then the interrelationship digraph part, all the arrow drawing and the counting of the arrows can be done automatically. So something that might take 2 hours earlier this week took me about 15 minutes. And so you keep the audience in the room. You leave there within a very short period of time, understanding, okay, we came in with 10 or 12 different problems at a high level that we probably needed to solve. And we're leaving with one or two drivers that are potential root causes. And so it really helps drive alignment, whether that's a strategy session or whether it's a session at the tactical level. So that's just one example I found that where AI can be an incredible enabler to the process improvement process.
So lean, yes, is about people and problem solving, but people create chaos and noise. So AI really is just helping us to take the chaos and noise out of it, but retain the people part.
Yep. No, I think that's very well said. And I think the people part, a lot of what I try to do in my work and in my daily life don't always live up to it. Is I try to follow the Shingo tenets of respect every individual and lead with humility. And so in starting to write this book, I've been thinking about, are those tenets sufficient? And I think to keep the people engaged, I'm suggesting a third tenet. Don't know exactly what it is yet, but preserve human judgment is the one I'm kind of zeroing in on now, so that we make sure that people are involved in the decision making. And you can see how this could become an over reliance on automation if we allow it to be so. So I think it's important to make sure that those tenets or those foundational principles for lean are maintained as we introduce more automation.
Yeah.
And actually, in your lean definition, I picked out 3 words I really like. The first one is disciplined, because often lean isn't. So disciplined is really important. And the discipline part will help with proper use of AI as well. So disciplined, I like the word everyone, because that's really important. Lean should involve everyone in the business and see people as experts in their place of work. And then consistent is the other one, because again, that's where lean can fall down, when we're not making consistent efforts for continuous improvement. So yeah, I really like those definitions, Randy. Well done.
Right.
Thank you.
And you called that, I just want to confirm again, because I was writing that down. Interrelational?
Yeah, interrelationship digraph.
Interrelationship diagraph.
Yeah, it's a tool that was developed, I believe, in Japan decades ago. And it was one of the fundamental quality tools that was in use. And it's fallen out of favor, I think, in large part because it's just so laborious to work through. But it's extremely effective in identifying root causes or potential root causes.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than that example you just gave with using that tool, having AI use that tool and create that for you, do you have any other real world examples that people might be a little more familiar with, how lean has significantly, or how AI has significantly improved a lean process?
Yeah, that's one of the questions I ask the interviewees in my book, and I've got a long list that I'm hoping to summarize a bit and be able to clarify. But one that comes to mind is an example of, if you've ever tried to plan or schedule a job shop manufacturing environment, AI has been a huge enabler in that regard, because people can only go so far. People have attempted to use heuristics and so forth in the past, but AI has really helped not necessarily come up with a perfect answer, because the next day enough of the variables change so that the answer on Tuesday is not the same answer on Wednesday, but at least directionally moving the organization on the right path, which helps reduce the WIP level. It helps increase throughput in the business. It helps increase velocity. All those things we're looking for in a manufacturing environment, especially a complex manufacturing environment where it's not process orientation. It's more of a job shop, small lot batch environment.
Interesting. Do you have you said you have this long list of things that people are saying, hey, this is how we have used it. Is there any out there that really surprised you? You're like, wait, what? That you can think of right now?
there's nothing that really surprised me. Most of the applications so far are those that eliminate administrative effort. And so
Okay.
the same things that I think you and I are doing now. There's some suggested applications that people are starting to test out, but we're really, most organizations are fairly early on. There are a lot of skeptics and so forth. And I'm old enough to remember some of these disruptors that have occurred in the past. So, like when the computer was introduced um, at the laptop or the personal computer level, it was viewed as a something that might be able to assist in certain applications, but people
Right.
never envisioned, where we are today. So I think the same thing will happen with AI, where some of the early adopters are just on the fringes, but I think 10 years from now, we'll all be amazed at some of the uses of AI and within Lean and really our entire work environment.
Right. And I love you sent us this slide for the listening audience that is not watching it. What do these things have in common? Electricity, personal computer, telephone, railroad, automobile, AI, radio, aviation. And the thing they all have in common, other than being really cool things that we're all used to now, was most people didn't see them coming. Like you mentioned about the personal computer and the internet is just another passing fad that, that our man Bill Gates said. Like, seriously.
I'm old enough to remember some of these in the early phases. So, like the internet, I never would have envisioned that it would become what it has become today. Same thing with the personal computer.
Right.
People did not envision everyone having a computer in their home, let alone in their pocket, right? And I also have seen the evolution with the telephone over time, where what it was when I was a kid, where it would the phone hanging on the wall and you had one in your house, to where we are today. So I think AI is a similar disruptor, and I
Yeah.
think no one can predict where it's going to be, 10, 20 years from now.
Right. It's crazy. It's crazy. Shoot, I don't even know if we can predict where it's going to be in, say, 6 months from now. Like
Yeah.
I keep hearing those that are, doing it saying, hey, you haven't even seen what this is capable of yet. And it's still, if we can keep it from like eating itself and just like feeding on its own, you know, language models and continue to spin it in a little circle. But yeah, all of this is amazing stuff to see how we can use it. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we don't know, I suppose, is the answer to where we're going to be, what's going to happen with AI, what's going to do, how's it going to affect jobs. We don't have answers for all of that, so a lot of it is wait and see. So let's talk a little bit more about how it's impacting the workplace right now. And again, back to lean and how we as lean practitioners can use AI, how we can introduce it to our customers and clients. Because we really do have to get up to speed with AI. I mean, we really do. We have no choice. And a lot of the time, as consultants or as business owners, we talk about waste within our processes. That's a big part of lean, is trying to reduce the waste through trying to reduce the inefficiencies. So where can AI help us there, Randy, do you think?
I think in my personal life, and I think many share the same perspective, when I'm writing something, whether it's a chapter in a book or whether I'm writing a memo for the board of directors or whether I'm writing something I want to distribute to the employees, I'll draft it. In the olden days, I would show it to my wife and she would edit it for me, and there would be 7 or 8 words preserved from the original draft. But she's no longer willing to do that for me. So now I turn to AI and I submit the draft and I say, please, light rewrite. And invariably it comes back with um, a little bit, fewer word content. So I'm getting the message across in fewer words. I'm doing it more succinctly. And so I think I benefit because it saves me time. My wife benefits because I'm not asking her to do edits for me. And I think the receiver benefits because there's more clarity in the messaging. And so I think just simple things like that free up time for people and leaders to do other more important work.
Yeah, That's a really good example, and actually, they're
Yeah.
the kind of examples I hear people talking about most at an individual level. There's a lot of people using AI to pop in their content and analyze it, and cut out the thinking and the writing part. I've also seen teams using it for the likes of when you upload a value stream map, for example, and you ask AI to actually analyze the value stream map and come up with the bottlenecks, and then not just that, but come up with some solutions to the bottlenecks, and not just that, but come up with once you feed it more information, a plan, for the next 30, 60, 90 days when it comes to this process.
Right.
Have you been involved in that kind of work or seen that happen anywhere, Randy?
Yeah, just in the last 2 weeks, we had a fairly elaborate swim lane map for a complicated process, and we asked AI to take a look at it and make the recommendations that you listed. And what I found was it came pretty close, but without enough context. Some of the recommendations were not quite on the mark. So I think, and at some point in time, it may be capable of doing this without as much human intervention, but I still find that there needs to be a human reviewing the output, making some clarification. Sometimes it's a matter of providing additional input so that the AI application understands the environment that we're talking about and what are some of the constraints and so forth. But right now, there's still a need to really review that carefully because sometimes it's just not, it's not correct. So it helps, it shortcuts the time and the process, but it doesn't replace the human mind.
Which is good. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I was going to ask that, because there are going to be some people, some of our listeners here, who are, I don't want to say old school, but traditional enough that, hey, AI it does its thing. Okay, it crunches numbers and looks for patterns, but really it's the human mind and the human experience that lean really thrives in, and that makes it possible. But are there what kind of other misconceptions might leaders have in regard to being able to integrate AI? Like, this
Yeah.
isn't something you can just, like, hey guys, give me all your stuff, we're going to throw it in this little magic machine, we'll come back in about 30 minutes and all our problems will be solved.
Yeah. Very good question. So I am a get the process right first kind of person. I've always been a skeptic with regard to systems and automation because I've seen it go wrong
Sure.
more times than I can count. And I think AI kind of falls into that same category. So I think AI is not going to fix a broken process. So I think we need to start there. AI can make some suggestions and probably do so faster than a human being can do, but it all starts with having a process before we apply automation or before we try to systematize it.
Right.
And so I think that for me is the fundamental misconception is AI is going to replace the CI, OpEx, lean person. No, I think they will enable their work and help them do their work, faster and even better, but they're not going to replace it. I think a misconception that some have is about AI replacing people. And I think that having seen the computer come along, AI, I think, will be just like the computer, where when I was a kid, you'd have rooms full of people with adding machines, right? And they're
Right.
adding pages of numbers. Well, the computer replaced those jobs, didn't replace the people. Those people had to find other activities and other jobs. But I think the same thing is going to happen here, where there'll probably be elements within companies and manufacturing companies and so forth that those jobs will be replaced, but those people will still be needed to do other activities within the organization.
Yeah. I see. I see it kind of like how I have when I worked for the state of Nebraska, or any client that I have now. When we're looking at improving a process, and maybe it's a process that Catherine is heavily involved in, and when we map it out, we find out that 75% of the map are tasks that Catherine does, and we're able to cut that down to say 30% of the map is now tasks. That doesn't mean that Catherine isn't a valuable team member. What we just did was we just freed up space for Catherine to do other valuable things,
Right.
that need to be had. So if AI can help us shrink down this task that's typically and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I have yet to find anyone that says I only do one thing, and there's never a problem. I never have any backlog. I don't have other jobs or other tasks that have been assigned.
Right.
It's always, hey, we're trying to free up time for you to get more value done than
Right.
you're able to do right now. More valuable work, value add work.
Absolutely. But another application I've found with AI is that a lot of times the continuous improvement OpEx lean person is fairly narrowly focused. And what I find is there's work going on, let's say it's on the factory floor to improve a process. But when you step back and look at the organization, the problem is in the business operating system. So it might be in on the demand side. It might be that there's not a working SIOP process. It might be that the ERP system is not working effectively. It might, there's a long list of things. With AI, if you provided enough data of all the problems that are taking place within the organization, there are very few, probably no human beings who have expertise in all elements of a business operating system. It'll at least identify, hey, these are some places you probably need to look, because back to the root causes again.
Right.
If we're working on something on the factory floor and improving process X, if that's not really a root cause of the business problems, whether it's capacity, quality, safety, cost, on-time delivery, then we're really not helping the business to a large degree. So I think it's a valuable way to do a quick scan of where should we start.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's a bit of a barrier here in a lot of organizations. Well, definitely a lot of small to medium organizations in terms of data that they can use, clean data that they can, let's say, put into AI models to actually get what they need from it. Because a lot of organizations are not actually, let's say, collecting data in the place where work happens. They might have a process, a step-by-step process, and be clear on what that is. But they don't know day to day, hour to hour, what's happening within that process. So even trying to get to the point where you have a value stream map is difficult for some organizations. Now, we tend to talk about lean and these tools like everybody's using them, but they're not.
Right.
So we do have to, I suppose, remember that AI will help us, but we still have to do the basics in terms of setting up our processes and setting up our data collection methods to get the information we need to enable AI to use it. Is that right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Most of the clients I work with now are small to medium sized companies, and every one of them suffers from the lack of accurate data. And so, what I think AI can help with there is, let's say a client is struggling with on time delivery and they don't know why. And they don't have the data to be able to produce the models that will allow you to understand what's happening. What AI will do is it will suggest some some equivalents. So let's say if you don't have labor hour information, it will suggest revenue as a proxy. And so then it's okay, it's not 100% accurate, but let's use revenue as a proxy for supply versus demand, so we can see, are we running into a mountain? Or are we going to go off a cliff from a load versus capacity standpoint? And um, and use that data to do some high level predictions, where if you don't have the data to do it accurately, at least directionally it'll help you understand, is timber going to be overloaded, so we can begin to take some actions ahead of time. So I think you're right. In most cases, the data is not available to do what we'd like to do, and so you need to find other proxies for the data that you're trying to use. Yep. Yep. Right. Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think for the leader to admit they don't have all the answers, AI with AI or not, that's a good place to start. But if you're trying to solve a problem together and you're using AI as a tool to solve that problem, especially as you mentioned, AI will come up with a number of suggestions, and several you can probably dispense with right off the bat because they don't fit the situation, right? But invariably, there might be one, two, or three that do make sense, and so the team can select from that. And I think that's a good way to build some ownership because they then, okay, this is something we selected. It's got a probability of working where the things we've tried in the past have not. So I think it's a good step forward.
And I think one of the things that people may not understand that what you guys are talking about or what we're talking about here, but specifically some of the things that you guys talked about in regards to, hey, how do we solve this problem? It may take a team a while to figure out how to get AI to do what it wants to do or what they want it to do. Like I've been working with AI this week, just trying to understand it and find better ways. And I've spent, I mean, I don't want to say I'm embarrassed to say this, but I wish it wasn't quite as long, and it's user error. But it's taken me 2 to 3 hours to figure out, exactly. Hey, this is what I want to do. How can I get you to understand what I want to do? What information, what data do you need to have to be able to do this? And it took some iteration. But one of the mindsets that I think is important um, is to see AI actually as a teammate. Like we're working together. What does my teammate need to be able to do this? Now, it's not a person. It's not, I don't want to anthropomorphize it or anything like that. I'm not going to take it on a date and go get ice cream. But if I think about it as a teammate, that's different than if I think about it as a tool. Because as a tool, I'm going to throw things at it. I'm going to get frustrated because it's not making what I want it to make. But if I think of it more as a teammate, okay, so let's go back and forth. And what more do you need for this? Here's what I want. Here's an example. How can we get this? That I have found, while it takes a little bit of time, but once you have that, then just like the process of trying to come up with a really detailed SOP, once you have it, like it took a while to get that and to confirm that this is all the steps we need. Once we have it, though, now it's so much easier for everybody moving forward. And I think that's something that people need to, that I needed to, when I say people, I mean Shane, that I needed
Yeah.
to be
No,
aware of.
yeah, no, very good example. So I think of the AI as being similar to the internet. So when I was a kid, if I wanted to know anything, I would either look in the encyclopedia, which is always
Come
dated,
on now.
or I would go to the library and research it, right? When the internet came along, it gave me a place to go for information. It wasn't, it was faster. It wasn't always 100% accurate, but it gave me some where to go for some information that was at hand. I see AI as being just one step beyond that, another disruptor that provides the next level of information quicker and oftentimes better. But again, it needs to be tested because just as information on the internet is not always accurate, the AI recommendations are not always going to fit the situation, at least in 2025.
Right.
Very
Yeah.
true. And also, so you asked about the misconceptions, Shane. Like, so definitely, that's I suppose, a really good list of misconceptions and what we can do. And I think we touched it in there in another one, and that is this whole area of AI in organizations. It's not the responsibility of the, I suppose, the IT team. Do you know, it is the responsibility. We need to get everybody involved in it. And if we think that it just sits with the IT team and we don't start bringing people together from all of the different departments and front lines, I think we're going to end up with a problem. So we have to make sure that, I guess, that misconception gets wiped out as well in terms of
Mhm.
it's specifically how AI is implemented in organizations. Have you seen anybody running into that problem, or no?
The people that I'm interfacing with now are not that far downstream. They're still experimenting on an individual basis. A few are starting to talk about policies around AI, but they've not yet implemented them. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you mentioned that because that's another good question for me to to ask the people in the interviews for the book, because I've seen very few early examples of that. So, excellent thought, but
I'm just a little bit concerned about it because I chatting with my friends at the weekends, and we're always talking about AI in your company and in our company and what's happening. And to be honest, they don't really know what's happening. They sort of hear, oh, AI is coming in, but they're not as involved as they should be in the discussions about how it's affecting their work. So I just think at an early stage, just like lean, when we start talking about lean, and that lean principle actually fits in with AI, rather than we've been talking about how AI fits in with lean, but it also goes the other way around, that we need to bring in that principle of respect for people into our AI efforts hugely as well, I think. So
exactly. I've been in senior roles in many companies, and what I found is that leaders oftentimes don't want to admit they don't know something. That can have to do with lean, that can have to do with a number of things, but I think AI fits in that same category. So I think the danger is that the folks in leadership roles aren't asking enough questions, admitting, hey, I don't understand this, so that there could be some problems within the organization as a result of that. So, just as many leaders don't really understand how lean works and they're afraid to ask, we could be in a similar situation here.
Yeah. So I have spent hours just watching YouTube videos about how people have used AI and prompt crafting and trying to understand not just how can I get better LinkedIn content, but really how can this help me in my daily task? What tasks that I have that I can then use my teammate AI to do? But yeah, focusing on just watching all kinds of videos. But what I haven't seen in these videos is how to maintain that kind of human aspect, like you were talking about, Catherine. That there is that human centric aspect and values in lean. How can organizations, as they're moving into this and starting to understand the power of AI and what some of the possibilities how can they maintain that human centric value that is so vital to what we believe in regards to lean?
Yeah, I think that's the people I've talked to so far who have a fear of AI. Their concern is, rather than go see, you'll ask AI to study the data and make some recommendations based on that. So the people who are now on a Gemba walk and the people who are actually out talking to people and seeing things firsthand, the concern is that will cease because there's an easier way to gather that data. And so I think that I don't have an answer for that yet. That's one of the things I hope to capture as a result of the interviews for the book, but just what are some of the concerns, what are some of the dangers, and then what are some of the mitigation strategies we can do to prevent those things from happening? Because that's the easy path, and it'd be very easy to just sit at your desk and let AI gather data and make those decisions for you.
yeah, I read a quote somewhere. It went along the lines of make AI the enabler, not the hero. And I think that's a good mindset for leaders
Yeah.
when we're working with teams and people, is just to talk about AI as an enabler. Which this is you, it's your work. So we're not romanticizing it, maybe as much as we are at the moment. Um, just one last question, because we're coming to the end, Randy. We kind of have talked all about AI without mentioning AI tools or things that we can use. Like, I know a lot of people would be familiar with ChatGPT, but there's literally hundreds of them out there. People have told me, Perplexity is great, Claude is great. Shane, what are yours? What are your go-tos?
Perplexity, Claude, and ChatGPT right now. Those are my three.
So people are tending to focus on these few narrow, I think, tools. So how do we get beyond that and you start using a broader set of AI tools?
So, very good question. I ask my AI tools if I should be using others, and they're telling me no.
Did you really?
Honestly, I did, because I wasn't getting the response that I was asking about a Microsoft product, and I got a fairly stern reply back, with regard. So, but no, I'm using a small set. I would like to explore more. I have some friends who are are exploring other tools, and so I'm going to be talking about that a bit in the book. Um, Honestly, I'm trying to stay away from some of the tools because I know to try to keep the book relevant for a few more years, I'd rather not
Right.
be tool focused because I know it won't be long before some of the tools we're talking about will be, displaced by others.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the tools are industry specific as well. Like in manufacturing, you've got companies out there selling just AI sensors and whatever for machines, and you've got very industry specific that we just most people wouldn't hear of because it's not in their industry.
Right.
And then you've got all these different AIs doing bots, customer service, robots and calls and things like that. So chatbots, and but so many different companies are selling these and providing these, and there's just so much at the moment. But yeah, I think it's good to try and keep on top of it. And Shane, you should ask your. I'm going to ask my ChatGPT, the same question Randy asked. See, do we get the same answer? I'd be worried.
Right.
I'd be
So
worried.
so in that bigger thing, so Randy, you have this sentence that I don't know if this went through ChatGPT. I'm just going to say because it is a mouthful to say, but I wanted you to speak to, just as we're wrapping up here, just some of the things that some of the transformations that ChatGPT gives. You have this. I don't know if this is in the book. I'm assuming it's in the book or in a book
Um,
or will be, but most people
it-
don't know that they're living through. This is where it gets me: a game-changing, disruptive, revolutionary, paradigm-shifting transformation. Like that's
yeah,
huge of a sentence. But what
yeah.
does that mean?
I,
Instead of looking at the tools, what might be some of the things in how might AI transform so many things? And let's just we'll just talk about lean. But is there just some little quick things that you can grab and say, hey, it's going to be a game changer because this or because this or whatever.
this is a perfect example of the use of AI. So I said we're going through a transformation with AI. What are some other similar terms that might be used? Well, this is a short list of what AI came up for me.
Okay.
With tongue in cheek, I came up with the title for the slide, but it really is these words apply where whether you call it a breakthrough or a disruptor or a revolution, that is what I think AI is representing today. And if you really look back a bit, AI started years ago, just spell check and some things that
Right.
existed. So there are early applications, and now we're expanding the field a bit. But I think all these words apply. You can pick the one that best fits your situation and your environment. But we're in the early stages of it, and I think having lived through the computer transformation and the um, telephone transformation and some of the others, you really don't know you're in it until you're kind of looking back at it, and
Right.
in retrospect, you see, wow, it's amazing how much changed in the last X years.
Right. Right. And I'd love for you to wrap up with this, as I don't know if this is a warning, if this is an encouragement,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
your options for AI as a lean continuous improvement OpEx leader. You
yeah.
list three options.
I I think this applies to any of those transformations we talked about. So the early non-adopters of the automobile or the airplane or email, same situation. So if you're a leader in lean continuous improvement OpEx and you ignore AI, you honestly, you yourself and your organization have the risk of becoming irrelevant.
Yeah.
You can fight it. I've seen people fight the computer. I've seen people fight, all the things that are listed on the transformation slide, but you're just burning energy. And or you can choose to be out in front and lead it and help shape the future of OpEx and make sure that we're um, risk mitigating the things that could lead to a dangerous impact to the organization and to lean. But I think those are the choices right now. And what I'm choosing to do is number three. I can't do it by myself, so I'm trying to understand when people who are smarter than I am with regard to AI and lean,
Yeah.
what can we do? What shouldn't we do? And what are the first baby steps you can take to incorporate AI into lean in your organization?
I love that. I love that you're so passionate about this topic, Randy. I love that you're learning and sharing that learning as you go, because I think that's just so, so powerful. You're not coming from the perspective of somebody who, as we said earlier, says they know it all and tells people what to do. You're actually just learning and sharing that learning, and obviously using all of the experience and wealth of experience that you have from your previous work in organizations to do that. So we're all really learning. So I think that it will just be so helpful to everybody. And thank you so much for sharing all of those insights. If anybody wants to keep in touch and follow you and follow your learnings and obviously buy your book, where can they find you?
Yeah, probably the easiest way is I've loved to connect with people on LinkedIn. So please send me an invitation. My website is kestersongroup.com, just my last name, group.com. Either one of those will work just fine.
Okay. And we will make sure we have those in the show notes.
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
very good.
So,
Definitely. So thank you. And Shane, thank you as usual for the wonderful questions. And we will wrap it up there. So we will say goodbye to our listeners, and we will see you next time on the Lean Solutions podcast. Bye for now.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.